Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you.
I think I know the answer to this question already, but have you seen the movie True Detective it's a TV series with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson?
True Detective.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar, but I don't have any pictures in my head.
It's a bit violent, so I assume there's a scene. Matthew McConaughey is this old, rough around the edges detective that's come back to help them on this big serial killer of children case. And he's definitely an atheist. And he's talking to Woody Harrelson, who is a good God-fearing Christian detective. And there's this kind of infamous line where McConaughey says, if the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is a piece of shit.
I mean, can you imagine if people didn't believe what things they get up to?
Exact same thing they do now, just out in the open.
Bull shit. It'd be a fucking freak show of murder and debauchery, and you know it.
If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is a piece of shit. And I'd like to get as many of them out in the open as possible.
And
interesting.
Yeah, and I was still pretty like rah atheist. And I was like, that's right. Don't nobody need no stupid laws, Bible, blah blah blah. Like anyway, so we're gonna talk about the Bible laws.
Let's do a deep dive, my love, into the Ten Commandments versus Buddhism.
Dun dun dun. Gloves off. Let's duel it out.
Who comes up with this stuff? So on the outset, let's just name that there is a difference between the Eastern and Western way of looking at life, love, and pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, very much so. Arose in very different contexts. Yeah.
And they are also pretty broad, maybe we could say tendencies rather than fixed categories, like the way the East looks at something versus the way that West looks at something. So it's not hard and fast, but the diversity between East and West, I think we can probably pretty clearly define some of the characteristics, at least the way that they're bent in a particular direction.
Yeah. Yep.
So philosophers, psychologists, comparative religious scholars, they've all noticed these reoccurring patterns, and it helps us understand why Christianity and Buddhism often ask different questions while addressing maybe similar or parallel human concerns, needs, questions.
Yeah. I mean, the other piece of context for this is I was reading, so we did the 12 links of dependent origination or suffering and liberation in our last couple of episodes. And the modern kind of neuroscientific interpretation, I didn't state it explicitly in the episode. I wrote it in the description, but I totally forgot to name that the modern lens came from Dr. Joe Loizo, who is Harvard-trained clinical psychologist, Buddhist-trained scholar from Columbia. He's been working for like 40 years about here's the benefits of contemplative practices and here's kind of the science behind it. And so he wrote this book called Sustainable Happiness back in 2012, I think, is when it was published. It's like a master's class. It's just, I think I would need 2 years to work my way through that thing. And he, somewhere toward the beginning, maybe in the first couple of 100 pages, he was talking about the basic ethics that are embedded in Buddhism, kind of some of the Buddha's very first teachings, and then compared them to, he said they're basically identical to the 10 Commandments. And I was like, well, I got to ask Ryan about this. And that was kind of what prompted the desire for this episode, because I was curious. I mean, one can kind of do a side-by-side sort of table comparison of here's what the Buddha said from sort of an ethical way to practice living a life that doesn't cultivate more suffering. And then, of course, I think most people are familiar with the 10 Commandments. And you can kind of line some of them up. It's not exact. So we are not. So I think what you were saying in your opening is we're not comparing apples to apples. It's more like apples to oranges.
Very much so. In a lot of ways, the 10 Commandments, just the 10 Commandments, or just maybe the main principles of Buddhism, they're going to connect with folks differently, or they are going to ring more true to folks who are in a particular way of looking at themselves or the world.
Mm-hmm.
We could say developmentally,
yep,
the 10 Commandments being black and white,
yep,
feeds into that second person perspective.
Yeah. Yep.
And it makes sense that in childhood, there would be a push for school classrooms in the United States to have the 10 Commandments hanging on the walls.
Like, we need to give our children these basic guidances.
Black and white, right and wrong, just simple. Like, you can't argue with thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
And yet that is not what the debate is over having the 10 Commandments hanging in our school. It is the giving preference to a religious faith tradition.
Yeah. Separation of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas Buddhism is going to be more along the lines of a fourth person perspective.
Yep.
Or maybe even beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that Christian mystics are left out in the cold.
No,
because those folks find a place to call home within the Christian canon of scripture that makes reality beautiful in what it is through a fourth or fifth person perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's way beyond just a simple 10 Commandment kind of a perspective or view. So as we get started, let's frame this up within the idea of questions.
Okay.
So what if we imagine two people standing in front of a river, and the Westerner is asking the question, what is the river made of?
Mm-hmm.
The Easterner is asking, how does the river flow?
So one is like substance, the other is more like process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So neither question is wrong.
Yeah.
One looks at substance, the other is looking at a relationship with it. And I think that's helpful. Number one, being someone who is from the West and educated and taught how to think and have a perspective primarily within the context of culture, asking that Western perspective, what is it made of?
Mm-hmm.
And can I measure it? And can I recreate it?
Yes. Can I control it?
Can I move it?
Yeah.
Can I turn it into electricity?
Yeah.
Those are the type of questions that we ask in the West.
Yes.
Versus pure Buddhist philosophy, and also the Hebrew scriptures, also referred to as the Old Testament, came out of the Eastern perspective of how does the river flow?
Yes.
That is the perspective that those have come out of. And so we also maybe have done a little bit of work of putting our Western spin on obviously Christianity, but also Buddhism today.
Yeah. So I would argue, even if you as a listener are somebody who is much more secular and doesn't really bother with understanding, if I imagine for most modern people, the 10 Commandments feel pretty outdated or simplistic. Like I've heard Sam Harris argue that if God was so all-knowing, like he could have dictated any rules for society, and these are the best that he came up with, like, surely a God could do better than this. And, so there's this kind of, I mean, I get his point, but it is to say there's a way in which our minds are, even if we are not Christian, even if we don't identify as religious or even spiritual, we are deeply shaped by the influences of Christian thought because it's just so ubiquitous in the Western culture. And even to some degree as Eastern ideas are making their way more and more, like that too is starting to have a deep influence on lots of areas of our life, even if it's not explicit. So I just want to give, like, this matters. It's helpful and interesting to contemplate in what way do these teachings show up in our laws, in our schooling, in our healthcare, in our businesses, in just the way that we perceive all of reality around us.
It is very much baked in to a culture that was born out of Puritanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me give you the 10 Commandments.
Okay. Yes.
I don't think I've ever preached at you from the 10 Commandments. This is kind of going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes. Okay.
Thou shalt not have any other gods besides the one true God. Thou shalt not make any idols. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Thou shalt keep the Sabbath day holy.
Yeah.
Honor your father and mother,
Yep.
that your days may be long on the earth. Thou shalt not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And lastly, you shall not covet. And then there's a bunch of things you're not supposed to covet. Your neighbor's ox, your neighbor's wife.
Your neighbor's clothes, their home.
Everything.
Everything, yeah.
The 10 Commandments.
Okay. I love it. So what is the wider context that those commandments came from? Like, what's the story behind them?
So this is super important because the 10 Commandments were not born in a vacuum.
Sure.
I would say that if we ask the question about the 10 Commandments, something along the lines of what is the need or the issue or the problem? What is the deficit that is being addressed in this narrative, this story? Like, what is the purpose of the story? And the story as a greater whole is that in beginning of Genesis, God creates everything and there's a garden and it's perfect and it's beautiful. And there is also the opportunity for acting upon our impulse.
Yeah.
And the human response to prohibition. Thou shalt not eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve are instructed. And so when the apple is eaten by both Adam and Eve, there is this picture, this idea of separation. Sin separates. So God goes from being present in the garden and walking with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day to God is out there, and I'm motioning towards above heaven, the sky,
Outer
and
space.
outer space, and
Yeah.
we start to see this three-tiered existence.
Mm.
We have heaven, the God realm, we have earth, people, and then we have hell, the evil spirits, and all of the bad folks who
Mm.
are getting their recompense for the carnal life that they...
The punishment that they deserve.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
So then the first murder happens
Mm.
with the brothers and the sons of Adam and Eve, with Cain and Abel.
Mm.
And they're addressing the problem of sin and how do we honor God, but now God is, like I said, way out there
Mhm.
and almost like you can't reach God, where before the narrative, this story is pointing to that there's something that we need to get back to.
Yeah.
There's a way of being at peace with ourselves and with the universe
Mhm.
that we're bumping up against. And so,
Can I notice something
yes.
in that? It strikes me how so my daughter, for example, when she was still alive, she was very much into what is called cottagecore.
Mm.
So cozy clothes, very simplistic farm-like existence. She loved horses. She had huge dreams to own a big ranch, basically, with her friend over in the UK that went to school for veterinary science. They both loved horses. And it's a narrative that I hear a lot in our modern culture as we get rather disenfranchised with this corporate lifestyle and consumerism. And there's this huge hunger in a lot of people to return to some idyllic existence. So I'm just
The
noticing.
simpler days.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that similarity,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel it. Like I mean, like I can locate it. It's like it's like right above my belly button. It's like in my gut. There is just this ache or this longing for simpler days. So anyway, I'm imagining it's interesting to think that perhaps folks thousands and thousands of years ago felt the same longing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether you look at the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, specifically here, Genesis, and then we'll get into Exodus in a moment, as literal stories that took place.
Mm-hmm.
Like these were actual people
Mhm.
and conversations and experiences. Or you're looking at it from a literary perspective, that it's teaching a moral. It's
Mhm.
teaching us who we are or the way that we experience or see the world. It's taking us somewhere. Like
Mhm.
there is an arc in this narrative of how the Ten Commandments came into being. So fast forward a little bit. The children of Israel have been in slavery in Egypt, and Moses is going to Pharaoh and saying, "Let my people go." He busts them out of Egypt after a little bit of sleight of hand and magic and plagues. They leave, and the people are a little bit squirrely, and Moses is trying to figure out how to keep things in line, and God calls him up on the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, and God writes the Ten Commandments out with his finger on these tablets of stone. But in the process, the people freak out and go to Moses's number two, Aaron, and says, "Hey, we don't know if Moses is ever coming back again.
Mm.
We need to know what our God is. So we're going to bring our jewelry and precious metals and make us a god." And so they melt it all down and make a golden calf
I understand.
and worship the golden calf. So Moses and God are having a convo, and God's like, "Hey, I think you got some problems going on." Moses is hearing all of the drama and races down the mountain to find people worshiping the golden calf, which is
an image that would have been worshipped within the nomadic tribes. And what happens? Moses breaks the tablets. He throws them down and they're destroyed. And then he has to go back up the mountain and receive a second time the 10 Commandments from God.
He has to go back and say, wait a minute, what'd you tell me?
Yep, exactly.
That's funny.
So this is the context of the 10 Commandments coming into being, that there are people who want to have connection, relationship. And the 10 Commandments are the part of the covenant being unfolded. So a covenant was when a greater party and a lesser party, you could say a tribal community has a king. They get with the other tribal communities around them and they sign treaties and they have agreements. And oftentimes there was shedding of blood. There was a sacrifice. There was members of the family were exchanged. And like we see in royalty of yesteryear, where there were individuals that were given in marriage to seal the deal between one kingdom and another kingdom.
Kind of like a strategic alliance.
Yeah. So those type of things would take place. And what's beautiful is God is initiating. The perspective of the people of the time is that God is initiating covenant with humanity. So God is lowering themselves and entering into a series of agreements and things like circumcision, things like the 10 Commandments, things like honoring the Sabbath. These 10 Commandments are the beginning of that process, of that. This is the expectation from the greater king to the lesser king. And
so it's like instructions for, if you want to be closer in relationship with me, here is how you go about living your life.
Absolutely. So take, for instance, when we first met, we had some conversations around, hey, are we going to take this relationship further? Do we want to be exclusive in our relationship? Do we want to move towards getting married? How do we feel about living together? What about finances, sharing a checkbook? Like, there are those type of conversations, talking about the history. Within the making of a covenant in this time, there would have been a reading of one's history.
Interesting.
This is where I've come from. This is what I've done. All of
here's my resume kind of thing.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Like,
here's all the mistakes I've made.
When we have sex together, are we using a condom because I haven't been tested, or those type of nitty gritty kind of almost embarrassing. Like, at
vulnerability.
Very vulnerable. At a dinner party, I'm not talking about my STD or STI history.
Sure.
Like, that's just not part of the equation. And the depth of vulnerability that this covenant is conveying is beautiful, both from seeing it as God's perspective towards humanity, and then humanity's reception and acting upon it is it's pretty amazing. So the 10 Commandments were born out of that for a people who had been in slavery, who weren't given permission to think for themselves or to do for themselves. So when we talk about second person perspective, we can imagine that was their way of orienting to life. I wake up, I go to work. The master, the slave driver, the Egyptian owner of the slaves is going to tell them where they need to show up, when they need to show up, when they're going to eat, when they're going to rest, when they go back to bed, and when they start all over again. Like, they did not think for themselves.
Weren't allowed to.
And so, no, not at all. So the Ten Commandments is kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? McGuffey readers going way back in time, back to the 1800s. Like, it is the basic, like, it's introducing you to reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's starting with learning the letters.
It's the basic foundational
It is.
structure that's needed.
Of what does it look like to have a human society that's functioning, and it's within the context of we're in a tribe. So it's not just me and you, but it's also me, you, and the big us.
Yeah. How long were, like, how many generations of Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt? Do you have any idea?
I used to know that right off the top of my head. I'm gonna
Yeah, go ahead.
Google that real quick.
One moment, let me trace that carefully. Biblically, it's traditionally presented as 4 generations. So from Levi to Moses, Levi, Kohath, Amram, and Moses. That's the genealogy in Exodus. But that creates a puzzle. Exodus also speaks of around 400 years in Egypt, which is far longer than 4 generations. Many scholars think that the genealogy is telescoped. That is, it's selective rather than exhaustive. For your podcast, that opens up a fascinating conversation about how memory, lineage, and trauma get carried forward, sometimes compressed into key representative figures.
Thank you, ChatGPT. I like it.
Delightfully nerdy question.
Delightfully nerdy question. That's awesome.
So 400 years or four generations.
Well, it's a lot more than 4 generations, but yeah.
Well, I like the idea of telescoping.
Yeah, as opposed to an exhaustive. Okay, yeah, that's a long time. I mean, that's twice the age of, well, anyway, it's a long time.
And if you think of the Native American population here in the United States, how many generations? We only have 250 since the United States came about. Before that, there were another couple hundred years where the Native Americans had their wisdom, way of looking at life and experience and being able to read the natural world literally beaten out of them.
Yeah.
And it's conceivable that the same thing happened for the children of Israel within the context of their ruling.
So it would be sort of like the Native Americans all coming together and saying, take my people out of this. I mean, it wasn't for them, it's their natural habitat, but let's presume that they could just kick us all out and they could reclaim their land. And then they would have to rebuild a society. And we all have probably heard the statistics on the rates of death and disease and mental health and substance abuse in the Native American remaining populations, which is completely understandable given the traumas that they've endured. So, okay. Yeah, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So Moses's words to the Pharaoh were, "Let my people go."
Yeah.
And that'll preach in a number of different ways, on a number of different planes. Let my people go. Because there is attachment. Buddhism. There are ways that we are gripped or held by ideas, by technology that keeps us back. And it's only through a process. We can dive really deep into liminal space.
Yeah.
And the threshold of wandering in the desert for 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what was that process? What did they have to distill? What did they have to purge? What was the healing and the cleansing experience that they went through? And we can find it in the book of Genesis, book of Exodus, where it talks about some of the steps that they went through. And maybe we could take a moment and say that it was a time of waking up cleaning up
Mhm.
and growing up in their experience.
I love the parallels in that are also present in Buddhism,
Mhm.
where it's like you could think of it on an individual level. Like the Buddha went through his kind of own period of wandering in the desert. So he had years and years of very aesthetic. He almost starved himself to death. He would whip himself. I mean, he would
Mhm.
inflict because one of the kind of strategies that was often practiced were we're going to deprive this physical body is the problem, and so I'm going to deprive myself of earthly pleasures to kind of cleanse and purify, and then he figured out, well, that doesn't actually work. And then so he had a kind of like he recognized I there's a thing here I need to figure out, so I'm going to dedicate myself. And then had his awakening, and from that awakening came, well, the Four Noble Truths, which
Mhm.
include, the last noble truth is the um, Eightfold Path, which is part of together. Those kind of all make the parallels to the Ten Commandments. So it's delightful.
Mhm. Mhm. So there is definitely a cultural context of the Ten Commandments
Mhm,
that it's
mhm.
important to keep in mind as we look at it. And again, to name explicitly that the division between West and East is not an absolute division.
Yeah.
There's Jewish contemplative traditions that we have the Desert Fathers and Mothers, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and the Christian mystics like Mr. S. Eckhart and John of the Cross.
Mhm.
They often sound surprisingly Eastern in
Yeah.
their emphasis on direct experience, inner transformation, and contemplative approach.
Mhm.
Likewise, Buddhist traditions have their own ethical codes, philosophical debates, and doctrinal precision that can feel very Western.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let's dive into this.
Yeah.
I read the Ten Commandments. What
Yep.
are the 10 modes of negative action, my love?
Yeah. So there's there's separate these 10 ways of living life that are going to result in more suffering are there's like three big domains. We have like a physical, here's how I act bucket. There's a verbal, here's how I speak. And then there's a mental, here's how I think. And so in the physical action bucket is violent actions lead to traumatic injury, which is akin to thou shalt not murder
Mhm,
in the Ten
mhm,
Commandments. There's also compulsive acquisition. So wanting more, wanting more, wanting more leads to a feeling of scarcity, which is kind of like thou shalt not steal.
mhm,
And there's perverse sexuality, and one should not think of it too narrowly. So that we have that we all have a very instinctual drive. It's like the lust, desire. We desire all kinds of things in life. So, perverse, maybe desire leads to frustration, which is kind of like thou shalt not commit adultery.
mhm,
So, those are the physical ones. Then we have four ones related to speech. False speech engenders mistrust. So, thou shalt not bear false witness. Slander engenders disrepute. So if you talk poorly of other people kind of tend to think, well, what are you saying behind my back when I'm not present? There's not an explicit 10 commandment on that one. Abusive speech engenders isolation. People don't want to be around you if you're talking abusively. It's interesting. they related that to honor thy father and mother, a very pro-social. So it's a way I imagine of saying speak honorably and obviously treat honorably the important people in your life. Idle speech engenders contempt. So thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Just idle, empty use of speech. We've all been around those kinds of people who talk and 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 talk. It's so annoying. And then we have the mental thinking bucket. Covetous intent results in dissatisfaction. Thou shalt not covet. Malicious intent results in insecurity. Love thy neighbor. Just broadly relational instruction. Unrealistic views result in confusion. So that the first and second commandments, no other gods besides me, or no idols. It's like a dismantling of illusions, being able to see clearly. So the Buddhist ethic perspective is less about, well, it's interesting. So I was going to say it's less about don't do these things, otherwise you're a terrible person. Or I know, I as a God will no longer approve of you, is always how my ears heard it as a child. Because of course that was just very much my parents' energy towards me. Hearing you walk through what the true meaning of a covenant is actually really helpful. Like it gives a kind of context that I don't think I've ever had before. And because it certainly wasn't the way the adults in my life oriented towards me. There wasn't respect. It was power over, not how can I best support. Not to say that they didn't love me, blah, 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 all of those caveats. I was actually incredibly privileged in lots of really important ways. They tried their best. However, because they didn't know how to love themselves, they couldn't then extend to either my brother or I genuine care and love. And so then everything just felt very shameful or very punishing or very coercive or manipulative. That is always how the Christian God has landed in my nervous system. And I had a huge allergy to any kind of ethical proclamation until my late 30s, potentially early 40s. Which is not to say that I took a very rationalistic view on how to best live life, which is perfectly fine. I would never steal, I would never kill, but I did not have just the basic understanding of, for example, gossiping about other people hurts me. And it doesn't feel good if I'm paying close attention. So there wasn't a direct connection to the cause and effect nature of my thoughts and actions. Yes, action. Like I knew that, don't steal or you're going to end up in jail. Like I definitely had that, but not the compulsive acquisition leads to scarcity. I didn't quite get that for most of my life. I was definitely caught in, well, I don't feel good, so let me go shopping and buy a new outfit, or let me go buy this nice fancy car. Yeah, and I didn't see the way that just leads to more. It creates, that is what creates scarcity. It's like there's never enough. It's just is this empty. You can't ever fill up that hole. So.
And that's one of the reasons why, I guess that's kind of a bold statement, the effect of Jesus's words to give to the poor. And if someone asks for help, don't deny them. Like it's literally teaching our nervous system, there's enough. I can share.
There's abundance.
I can give.
You have all you need.
And that is the neural pathway that's being laid down versus I have to get more. I have to squirrel away.
Protect.
Yep.
Hoard.
Guard.
Yes.
more, never enough versus the gift of generosity, which that Buddhist principle is pointing to.
Yep.
It's also interesting. I made a statement to someone that I met recently in a memory care community. He's caring for his wife, and it was at lunchtime, and he's sitting next to her, and she's a total assist with food, and he's caring for her in just a beautiful, generous way. And he is telling some stories about being with other folks, friends who have partners and spouses that are end of life and experiencing dementia. And he said, in so many words, we just don't know how to respond to this. And there were tears in what, and the emotion underneath the words that he was sharing. And I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry. He's in his 70s. You are absolutely right. We live in a culture that doesn't give us instruction or insight or wisdom on how to end something. And he looked at me. He was like, what do you mean by that? And I just briefly shared with him how we're not told that, number one, it's okay to let go. And number two, it's reinforced over and over again. Hold tighter, get more. Like there isn't instruction. Whereas coming back to the covenant people of Yahweh, the part of the covenant is what you get. It's the blessings. It's how you're being supported. And then there was a second part of the covenant where if you or the other party decides that they're going to break the covenant, what is going to happen? How are we going to follow this path?
Great.
And what is it going to look like? That's not you and I, as Sophie was marrying us in the woods on our wedding day, like that, even though I know covenant language and have studied the Hebrew scriptures for decades, it wasn't on my top 10 list of things to do for us to be like, okay, and if we decide to break up, this is
how
what's
should we
gonna
go
happen.
about it?
But that was built into their culture.
It's like the similar practice of Buddhists contemplating their death, not because they're morbid humans who love to contemplate terrible things like death, but because they understand it is what allows us to appreciate the preciousness of our life and therefore to be able to live it with a whole lot more wisdom. And, after having walked alongside my mom and losing her, and then of course Bianca, death is such a gift. I mean, to have it, it's incredibly difficult, obviously, but we've all experienced loss and endings,
but not with grace.
In
the most part.
Yeah, right.
Because we don't have those examples. The examples we have on the big screen are people who go crazy.
Yeah.
Or
binge drink and get in fights.
Workaholic. Like they try to drown it out, whatever their poison is, to forget and to push it back. And there are folks who are out there doing the good work of helping people see the path through nature, or like in Buddhism, seeing the value of sitting with something that is dead and decaying and meditating on that experience. Or the Apostle Paul's words in the Christian scriptures, I die daily, or take up your cross and follow. These ideas are helping to break up something inside of us that I think Moses would walk up to Pharaoh and say, let my people go, because this is not serving you. The distinction between the 10 Commandments maybe is answered in this simple phrase: what kind of life honors God and protects community?
Can we unpack what we mean by God? a little, just a light question for the
My pastor on Sunday asked the question, is God your savior or is God your Lord?
What do you mean by
And
that?
yeah, so we have this idea that Jesus paid it all on the cross.
Okay.
And in the Christian faith, I'm not speaking for all Christians, but I will speak for the major denominations that I am acquainted with in the United States. Atonement theory,
Mhm.
we sinned. There needed to be a price paid for that offense, and Jesus' sacrifice on the cross paid for that. So for my dad, when he was in high school, sitting in his family's living room in front of their big old black and white television, watching Billy Graham and his crusade on television that night, as he invited the viewers to pray the sinner's prayer, that was a moment of accepting Jesus' sacrifice
Mm.
and accepting and saying yes to God's love in their life.
Okay.
So they're saved.
Mm.
So is God your savior? My dad would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
God is based upon that event, that
Mhm.
moment of time. Is God your Lord is another, that is a everyday, how do I live my life?
Mm.
Do I live my life in a way that reflects the value of God's presence in my life? And do I follow Jesus's words? Love your
Mhm.
neighbor as yourself. Help the poor, the widow, the orphan. Turn the other cheek when one slaps you. That is saying yes to, I have and this is very patriarchal, I have a king in my life, and I am
Mhm.
following what it means to live out that rule and reign of God's presence in my life. Now, me as a mystic, maybe a little bit more relational or experiential, do I have a framework that says there's nothing I have to do to get God's grace? Like it's all there.
Mm.
Yes. There's nothing else for me to do. God's love is unconditional and unending. And the Apostle Paul asked the question, what can separate us from that love? Not heights or depths. Nothing can
Mhm.
separate us from the love of God. And how am I living from that presence of love in my life? Do I live in a way where I'm honoring and respecting my boundaries, my needs, caring for my kids, caring for my spouse, doing right by my employer, caring for those in my neighborhood that have a need? Like all of those, that's the outflow of an internal experience. So that would be my definition of a relationship within the context of the Judeo-Christian Yahweh God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Jesus thing.
Yeah.
If you are involved in the 12-step program,
Yeah.
one of them
Mhm.
here in the United States or around the world, there is an acknowledgement of a higher power and needing to have a higher power in your life. And it's very clearly stated that it doesn't have to be the Judeo-Christian God
Yeah.
or one of the other many gods. It can be anything that is bigger than yourself.
Mhm.
So it can be a greater community. It can be nature. It can be air. It can, whatever works. I've had great conversations with atheists who
Mhm.
are experiencing a lot of freedom as I work in the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And their idea of something greater is whatever they need for that to be in their mind.
Mhm. Could be just the awe and wonder of anything that we don't understand,
Mhm.
the mysteries of.
It can be Mother Earth,
Yep.
something greater than you.
Yeah.
It could be a mountain, the blue sky.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, we understand in psychology the need for kind of like a role model of sorts, somebody or something to look up to, something that we can kind of that we can project this feeling of aspiration, adoration, because what we are doing is teaching ourselves how to be that.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving us an end goal to achieve, in a sense. And
In a felt sense, sort of a way.
Right.
Like, what does it
Helps
feel
us
like?
connect to that on the inside. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I led a guided meditation with our hospice team today at a meeting. And one of the ways that I point towards that, so we've got folks from a lot of different backgrounds. Some are Christian, some not so much. And I always try to connect with nature. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice that the ground isn't moving. Can you feel that there's a little bit of trust? You can let go and rest into your chair because your chair is being held by the earth beneath you. And then let's just pause for a moment. Think about everything that the earth is holding, and it's still spinning. And it's not spinning out of control. It's holding all the oceans. And there's hurricanes going on right now. And there are wildfires.
Yeah.
And it's holding that, and it's still spinning.
Yeah.
And notice that you're still able to trust the chair that's being held by the earth beneath you. And you can feel your feet on the ground, and it's pretty stable. And that is a gift that we have in this moment to feel for ourselves. And then as we meet with our patients and their families, we get to provide that same felt sense in the way that we communicate, the way that we're dependable, the way that we are serving and loving with compassion and helping patients die pain-free in their experience in life. But I can't give that to somebody unless I feel that first.
Yes. Yep.
And most of the people in our circle, they're not going to feel a sense of safety or connection or peace if I start pointing towards religious language or using religious language to point towards this, which I can.
Sure. Yeah.
And it is a tool or a gift that nature is always with us.
Yeah.
Mother Earth is always present and stable until she's not, for those that are in California experiencing earthquakes. And she's able to right herself. So what do we mean by God?
All of that. Yeah, thank you for that. That was
God is a much broader, I was going to say idea.
Experience.
I would rest in experience, a much greater experience than what our language can use. And language is a gift and not to be despised.
Our words are very powerful.
Mm-hmm. So in the 10 Commandments, we find an example of the kind of life that God honors, or maybe that honors God and that protects community. And then in the Buddhist 10, these positive actions, it's asking, or it's answering the question, what habits of body, speech, and mind normally produce freedom and reduce suffering? So it's asking almost two different questions. What kind of life honors God and protects community, and what habits of body, speech, and mind naturally protects freedom and reduces suffering? One begins with covenant, and the other begins with causality. One says, don't murder. The other says, what state of mind makes murder possible? One says, don't covet. The other asks, what illusion convinces us that we already are lacking something and that what we have right now isn't enough?
Yeah, and I think it's important to name that there is no better approach. It's purely what speaks to you and what works. Like which one connects more deeply with your heart and with your mind and with your way of seeing the world. I think both are really beautiful.
In seminary, one of the first assignments that I received was memorizing Exodus 20.
Okay. What's Exodus 20?
That's the 10 Commandments.
Oh.
So
Okay.
we were instructed to memorize Exodus 20 and then to meditate on it for an hour every morning that semester. And it was interesting because there are just so many little layers within the 10 commandments and that unfolding of God's agreement and the covenant with mankind, humanity, that it will still come to mind and just kind of roll right through my mind and honor and acknowledge. It wasn't in a legalistic way,
That process.
that invitation or assignment.
Yeah.
It was done in such a way that it was acknowledging that what we see is how we see.
That reminds me of so in this book that Dr. Loiseau wrote, where he's laying out this graph of, here's the 10 Commandments versus here's the Buddhist kind of version of that was part of the Buddha's first teaching. And he's trying to highlight a really important distinction in karmic law within Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So in our modern Western world, we operate pretty heavily from the perspective of like a rights-based humanitarianism, humanism. So, for example, if somebody acts unfairly or if they discriminate against you or if they abuse their power,
And autonomous.
Yeah.
Like there's separation big time.
Yes. So, if somebody does something against you, our natural cultural response is that person committed an injustice. They are the direct cause of my suffering, which at one layer may very well be true. It is, the impact can absolutely be felt. There's no denying that. Somebody in my life publicly wrote a bunch of really nasty things about me that landed in my nervous system in a very real way. Dr. Loiseau was trying to very carefully and very kindly point out an ethic of karma that views this in a very different lens. So there is the initial condition of the thing that is causing our pain. That we can't deny. I have a toxic boss. I had childhood neglect, whatever the condition is. That is a real, undeniable event. It provides raw material or the circumstantial context for whatever it is that we're experiencing. But our internal reaction is the primary cause of our developmental harm. So the real long-term damage to my career, to my health, to my nervous system is not about the event itself. It is about my internal distortions. It is about my destructive emotions that my mind will then create in response, which sounds a whole lot like blaming the victim.
It can be a little bit sketchy.
So we have to be, and I think I named this in one of the more recent episodes, that like it took me many years to really tease apart how do I relate wisely to the fact that I experienced, and everyone in life experiences, all kinds of injustices and painful events. And I don't want to, my only defense that I had against that was mostly just to pretend like it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm actually wanting to reconcile it honestly, and that's a very confusing and painful thing to do. And so the point of going through that is to reclaim your agency, because otherwise you're just a victim. Otherwise, how do you escape the fact that other people do things that we have absolutely no power or control over? And that will be true until the end of time. I don't care how powerful and rich you are. You will always be subject to the whims of others and to the whims of the systems in our culture. And so our healing is completely dependent upon our own reactivity. We can't base our happiness on other people behaving or doing or thinking a particular kind of way. Otherwise, we're just going to be forever lost. And so that's another. It is another kind of truth that just gets embedded in Buddhism a lot that has been very helpful for me to reclaim my own agency.
To recognize, the first story that comes to my mind in my experience is betrayal.
Yeah, sure.
And to have a partner, to have my wife cause a wound in my psyche the way that she did, that the first year after my divorce, it was preposterous, the idea of trusting someone again.
Yeah.
Or letting someone into that space of my soul.
Yeah.
And I needed a lot of therapy, and I needed a lot of time, and I needed to cry a lot. And even though I hated it, I needed to go through panic attacks at 2 a.m., like my whole nervous system. And that wound is still there.
Yeah, it is.
And so in a moment when I feel betrayed, immediately, like, I will just jump right back into that space without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I have to do a lot of work to be like, I am more than my wound. And that's exactly the type of language that I will use. Again, thank you, Moses, to Pharaoh, let my people go. Like, it doesn't deny the wound and the scar that I have from that wound, but that wound is not driving this craft. And I need, it's not denial, but in our relationship,
sure,
there are moments where that wound has been touched, and it's like total disorientation because I have opened up my soul to you, and the moment that it feels just a little bit like it could be going in that direction, it's just like,
it's a lot of energy.
Fucking no. And in time, and I think this is where right speech and right thinking and right action comes in to play, because of awareness and engaging with some of the Buddhist practices that are, for me anyways, on a parallel track with my contemplative practices that I've engaged with for a couple decades now. There is a way to slow down and to witness and to acknowledge, oh yeah, that got pretty close, but Alice Ann is not my ex, and I just need to take a deep breath and be able to shift and to move through. And that, I mean, what I just described in 30 seconds is something that feels like an eternity.
Oh boy.
When we're in it. And we can use the word triggered.
Oh yeah, it does. Time dilates, and you're suddenly 5 minutes feels like an hour, and it's awful. And days can stretch on, and it's just like, it's hard to remember that it's just a cycle, and all there is to do is to stay present. I like the Buddhist kind of imagery of purification, like burning the seeds that have been planted in the past. We are burning the storehouse of negative seeds that are still there and keep kind of popping up and trying to go roots. And, or maybe we could think of like pulling weeds out of the ground and clearing our garden. There's all kinds of metaphors. There's last night I woke up, I don't know, 2:30 or something in the morning, maybe 3, had that anxiety alarm bell in my chest for just no fucking reason at all. And sometimes resting in open, spacious awareness is the thing that calms my nervous system down. Sometimes that doesn't work at all. Last night was one of those nights. And it took me a little while to recognize that I was caught in kind of a panic anxiety. I was just sitting there kind of looping in anxiety, awake, trying to convince myself to fall asleep, just like not recognizing that I was caught. And then it hit me and I was like, oh, let me rest in awareness. I was like, well, this isn't doing anything. And then I used the kind of the more imaginal practice of like using a role model. So, we were talking earlier, whether that's nature or some figure that you can look up to. And that worked. I mean, just instantly everything just melted and I probably was asleep within 5 minutes. But there was this part of my mind that was like, God, this is fascinating. I never know what's going to work and what's not going to. And so it's really helpful to have kind of a whole toolkit of practices that you've developed, because sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. It's just
Traditionally, the Western way of looking at life emphasizes correct belief, orthodoxy, and doctrine. So trying to wrestle with it in our minds, fit it all together. The Eastern traditions traditionally are going to emphasize practice, meditation, embodiment, and training.
Yeah.
There's an old Zen saying that says, to know and not do is not yet to know.
I like that. Oh, that's good.
The author in the New Testament, Book of James, says, be doers of the word and not hearers only.
Yeah, it's very tempting to think we understand something. But until we've marinated in it and digested it and tried it on and wrestled with it, takes a while to soak through all those layers of genuinely deep knowing.
So if Buddhism and the 10 Commandments were to have an arm wrestling match, who would win?
It's such a Western thing to say. I have this like WWF image in my head.
Cage fight.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. They are equally complementary. I will link in the show notes. Joseph Goldstein has a really great, he's got a podcast. I think it's called The Insight Hour. But he did a series where he walked through the Eightfold Path and the Buddhist teachings, basically the version of the 10 Commandments. And he's such a masterful teacher. And I think I've listened to that series of his at least 3 times over the years. And it was such a, as I was really starting to, as the layers of cause and effect were just continuing to reveal themselves. And I was it's like, man, my life would have been so much easier if I had recognized this in my 20s as opposed to my 40s. But alas, here we are. Anyway, I appreciate his presence. He's very gentle and kind, but also brilliant and gives lots of great, kind of helps you see the nuances. So anyway, I will link to that because you could spend an hour on each one. Like to your earlier quote that you just gave about knowing and doing, like these, they are immediately logical and recognizable. Like you can follow them, you can follow the words and be like, oh yeah, I get that. But I imagine like your contemplative practice when you were in seminary, and you were asked to meditate on them for a full semester, there's a reason why. Like these are there's a lot there.
There are thousands and thousands of years of practice around that.
Yeah.
If you're interested in Zen Buddhism from a Christian perspective or Christian flavor, I recommend Thomas Merton's book, The 7-Story Mountain.
The 7-Story Mountain. Cool.
It will give some insight into his studies. So he was a priest and really found an incredible amount of comfort and insight in Buddhist teaching, specifically Zen. He was a Trappist monk at the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky, and he wrote the book. It's kind of his spiritual autobiography. It was published in 1948.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, friends, for joining us today. We ask that if you enjoy the podcast, please take a moment and like and subscribe. That helps us get the word out.
It does.
To other folks.
Yeah.
And as always, continue to enjoy the journey of remembering, bringing all the little bits and pieces of yourself back together, and that experience of self-discovery, awakening, enlightenment, and cleaning up all of the little glorious and beautiful messes of you that deserve delight and honor.
Well said. Thank you.
Because that's what we're doing.
Yep.
And it's a good thing.
Yeah. Slowly. Imperfectly, one day at a time.
Bye for now, y'all.
Bye. See you next time.